ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So inshallah, for a long time we are going to resume the book, the Sunan Abi Daawud rahimahullah, where we stopped and where we are starting from today is a section that is really specific for women, but then the men will have to know to also be able to probably guide them and also to have some reasonable discussion with them. So the section today is the hadith number 274, Babu fil mar'ati tastahadu wa man qala tad'u as-salata fi iddat al-ayyam allati kanat tahid. The section that's a woman does what is called al-istihad. In English language, they call it like irregular non-menstrual flow. That's like a literal translation, a flow that is not menstrual. And that whoever says that the person, that is the woman that is having that irregular non-menstrual flow, is going to leave the salat for a known days that she used to do al-haidah. So the section is just that, the section of al-istihada, the section of when the woman sees their irregular non-menstrual flow, that is not menstrual flow. That is the section. But before we go to the hadith, so there must be preamble. Alhamdulillah, we are all medically oriented, and I think this is quite necessary, because based on the hadith that is available to us from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the ulama, they derive what is called menstrual flow. So we need to know the norm, the menstrual flow, as is different from irregular non-menstrual flow. So the ulama, they describe it by three expressions or phrases derived directly from the hadith of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they will say the damul hayd, that the blood that is called menstrual blood, the damun aswad, is a blood that is dark red. If you like, you call it brown red. If you like, call it non-bright red. That means it is not bright, it's not red. And khawthiru, or some people call it sakhinu, some people call it golidun. That is one. Then the second one is that it is a blood that is a little bit thick in texture, in consistency. Then they added to it that karihatu rohya, that the smell is not like the normal smell of blood. Now these are the three expressions derived from the hadith of Rasulullah. Now if you look at medicine, like I always say, or not always, sometimes say, it completely is the same. I have discussion with some specialists, and I read about it. I'm not an obstetrician or gynecologist, but it's completely the same. Now, whoever antagonizes it, so it's either, just like Sheikh Uthaymeen has mentioned, it's either one, he has not read enough. That is our mundane books. That's one. Or two, or it's either that he does not understand the hadith very well. That is two. He's not applying it very well. Or he misinterprets it. They will give like 3 or 4 reasons why, when you see something that is against Islam, the person might not really understand it very well if you look at it. Or if he does not, it can also be that maybe the science has not gotten there. That is apart from the menstrual, this thing we are talking about. Please, I'm saying this, I've mentioned it before. If you see anything in Quran or in the hadith that is authentic, you quote the word that is authentic, and it does not seem to fit to your normal science thing, so those are the reasons. You don't understand the thing, or you don't really that you are not even a specialist, or maybe you are misinterpreting it, or maybe the hadith you are quoting or whatever it is you are quoting, it is not authentic. So like I mentioned, having done some little research about it, it fits perfectly into it. I will now reason, that is, I'm doing myself. Even though I'm alhamdulillah, a doctor today, if somebody has caught me along the way and say, tell me the features of menstrual flow, I'm a pediatrician. I know that it's difficult. I would not know how to describe it with these words. So, like I mentioned, I have to consult the books and I have to consult some specialists, not one, not two. So it's to us, not that we don't believe, but of course, Prophet has said, "Anna nabiyyu la kadhib," and Abdul I've mentioned it before. That because of event that happened, Prophet feels some people when he said, "I am Nabi la kadhib." It is real, and I'm the son of Abdul Muttalib. So whatever you see from Prophet, that's one. Now, having mentioned this, let us bring it down because it's important, so that I've done the reading for us. We can always relate this to this. Because if some, especially because they don't understand the thing, then they make some mistakes too. Now, if you look at the normal menstrual flow, please just a little one. For maybe a young woman that is about to menstruate, they usually menstruate around 5 days. Now, plus or minus 2 to 3 days. That may be 2, 3 to like 8 days. So the time that the blood will flow. Now, after it has flown, then there will be some hormonal release now. Now, the estrogen is good, so that we'll get to this. Why did the Prophet actually mention, or why the ulama derive this directly from what Prophet has mentioned? So after the estrogen is produced, now the endometrium, for those who are scientists among the doctors who understand better, now the estrogen will make it as if you are laying blocks on that wall. So it will be like a growth. The plate will start growing. Now, as it's growing, it continues like that until maybe around 13, 14 days when the woman is going to ovulate. So after the ovulation, then the progesterone will start being produced. Now, this progesterone is now going to cement what is being laid down by the estrogen. You know, it's like you're putting block, then there might be cracks in between. So the progesterone will now start like putting cement it very well so that it can be compacted. Now, as it continues up to like 26 days, so after that, there will be some sudden withdrawal of those hormones. Then those that has been laid down on the wall will break down. So by the time it breaks down, then that is of course what you see as the blood that flows. Now, if I ask you now, what is the thing that you are going to see from that is breaking down? It is very clear to everybody, whether you are scientist or not scientist. One is that the thing is breaking down, so that's like a debris that is coming down. So it is not purely blood. That is one thing. So it's not purely blood, because the blood flows from the vein, and you know the venous blood, everybody knows. It is not bright red. You know, the person did not study science or this thing. But it is what is venous blood. Everybody knows venous blood is not what? It's not bright red. So it's like dark red, like brownish red. You like it not too, it's not bright. So it's not an arterial blood. But then some of them are contains like some form of arterial blood. But then the venous blood overrides the arterial blood. So if you go to anybody, you say the blood of menstrual flow, it is what? It's not bright red. Usually is what? It is dark red. That's just like venous blood. Now we said it is thick, just like we mentioned, because it is not just purely blood that is coming out, like I've just discussed. Because there's what? There's the endometrium, there's debris, there's some form of all those necrotic tissues. Then some mucus is going to mix with it as it's flowing. So it is not what? So it is not. It will be thicker. That is as compared to the normal blood that is just flowing. Then we say that the smell is not like the normal blood smell. If an artery is oozing blood, or vein is oozing blood, that is purely blood. Even if you leave it there, at the point, if you smell it, he has his own natural smell. But then this is coming from an enclosed place with debris, like I mentioned, with some form of sloughs, with some form of mucin, and it's passing through the genital tract. So it's going to give it some form of, we don't want to say offensive, but some form of the odor that is not like the pure blood. So these are the three expressions, and this we should be, as Muslim, we should be able to explain to anybody that comes and say, this is what has been described, and how you relate it to medicine. Now, this background is important. Now we'll now go into the hadith. So that means whatever does not fit all these three qualities you have mentioned, then it is not regarded as the menstrual blood. Some will be able to recognize it, some will not be able to recognize it. According to findings, most women might not be able to differentiate, what is not menstrual from what is menstrual blood. But this is a template that a Muslim woman or a man should be aware of. So the hadith now proper, a short hadith. The hadith was from Salama, the wife of the Prophet ﷺ, that anna imra'atan kanat tuhraq ad-dima' ala ahdi Rasulillah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now fastaftat laha Salama Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam فقال لتنظروا عدة الليال والأيام التي كانت تحيدهن من الشهر قبل أن يصيبها الذي أصابها فلتترك الصلاة قدر ذلك من الشهر فإذا خلفت ذلك فلتغتسل ثم لتستفسر بثوب ثم لتصلي فيه. So the hadith is authentic, hadith is sahih. Now the meaning is that a woman, so the wife of the Prophet ﷺ now is telling us that a woman, she used to bleed. That is somebody that was bleeding really, that is not menstrual. It is prolonged that her menstrual days. Like I mentioned, between averagely 5 days, now between like 2 to 8 days. Now this woman, like she was oozing blood for more than her usual days. Then she now went to our mother, the Salama, the wife of the Prophet ﷺ, and the wife too was to the Prophet ﷺ. And Prophet ﷺ now responded that woman should look at the number of nights and days that she used to menstruate before she started experiencing what she was experiencing. So in our days, it can happen. Somebody is menstruating 5 days, 8 before, maybe averagely 5-6 days. But you now see that it's prolonged up to 15 days. Or maybe it's prolonged up to, let's say, 18 days. So this is what happened. In our days, maybe not that time. In our days, it can also happen to those that are taking what? Pills. These contraceptive pills. Or those that are using family planning. Maybe you put some implant. So all these ones, they can cause the blood to flow more than the usual flow. So then they fall under this particular hadith. In our days, somebody might have disease, for instance, that can also affect the flow so that it's more than the number of days he used to see blood. And Prophet said she should wait. That means she should not pray. She should leave the salat exactly the number of days she knew that she used to menstruate therein. Then when this thing has passed, فَإِذَا خَلَّفَتْ, when the days has passed, then the woman should take her spiritual bath. That the woman should now use a cloth to cover her woman's, of course, part, then her private part. Then she should now start praying. In our days, of course, many of our women, they don't use cloths. So what they use now is like maybe like pad. So that's what you can like the common thing that they use. Like if she's bleeding, then maybe she uses the pad. In those days, they were using a cloth. The hadith is sahih. So the hadith is very clear. Now the lesson from the hadith is that now somebody used to menstruate 5 days. Now she now starts menstruating. We'll finish the hadith today. The other ones, maybe by the next time we are taking the hadith, we might skip about 4 or 5 hadith because they are saying the similar thing. So inshallah. So the practical examples or the practical explanation is that a woman is menstruating. She used to menstruate 5 days. Now she starts the next month. Let's say next month, then she menstruates for, let's say, like 13 days. And she knew that normally she's supposed to menstruate 5 days. That is what she's used to. Now, she's going to use 2 criteria. Because when I was discussing with specialists, she also asked this question. So the woman, she used 2 criteria. One of them is that she will look at the blood. After the initial 5 days, she looks at the blood that comes at the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th days. Now, if the blood fits those things I've described, that it is aswad, is like this, if it fits those criteria, then she still should not pray any salat. Remember, I carefully choose 13 days. I will say it 14 days. Because once it's more than 15 days, according to majority of our ulama, please, this point is very important. If it's more than 15 days, she was menstruating 5, 7, 8 days before. Once it's more than 15 days, it is clear that most likely it is not her menstrual blood. The 15 days is a number that is very important in the section of menstruation for women. Once it's more than 15 days, it is almost clear that it's not likely to be menstrual flow, but then she should still look at those features. So if those features are there, then it's still likely to be the menstrual flow. But the one that most of our ulama, they actually agree on is that more than 15 days, she should just count it as it is not menstrual flow. Now, if you look at it, like I mentioned, 6, 7, 8, 9 days, now if it's the same features, then she should still leave salat, not pray. Then if it is not the same features, then she should what? She should continue to pray. That is what is mentioned in this hadith. And istihada is divided into two. There is one that is related, they call it al-istihada or damul istihada al-muttasil bidam al-haida. Like I mentioned, she is bleeding now 5 days. Then there is istihada that is directly linked with that menstrual flow. Then there is now istihada that is not linked with that one. That one is the regular one, meaning that she used to menstruate 5 days, then she finished menstruating. Then after like 2 weeks, or let's say 1 week after that, then she starts seeing blood again. Now, if she starts seeing blood again, now she's going to still look at those features. If it's still the same as what we have described, that what she used to see, then she still leave the salah, even though it's still the same month, and it was separated by a number of days. But then, if it's not the same, then she just take her spiritual bath and continue to pray. So we'll discuss, of course, how she prays, inshallah, in our future classes. But then, the other thing that might come, which we might need to discuss, is that, for instance, a young chap that is just coming up, she has not been seeing blood before. All right, this woman whose case was taken to the Prophet ﷺ, she had been seeing blood before this thing happened. But it might happen that somebody might not have been seeing blood before. So this is the first time she's seen blood. Then she might need to go back and ask the women that, okay, how does this blood look like when it is menstrual flow? So then she can ask them, okay, if it's like this, then she leaves. If it's not like this, then she doesn't leave. Now, the next question is that for us today, because one of sisters I've mentioned before, that she was taking the pills, these contraceptive pills. As she's taking it, she just realized that her flow is like, let's say 5-7 days. Then she realized that the flow now prolonged up to like 21 days. Now, from what I've discussed now, to be sure that it is clear, so that at least I will leave this place peacefully. Now, if she's taking pills and she now starts seeing the blood for, let's say, maybe like 3 weeks, or maybe like 4 weeks, Brother Kashala, so what do you advise this woman to do? She was seeing it 5 days, 7 days before. Now she started taking pills, and this pill she now starts seeing it 21, let's say 24 days. So what do you advise her to do? No. No. Inshallah. I think that's a perfect answer. Jazakumullahu KHYRAN. So I'll put it on the speaker. If she's taking pills and then the number of days has now prolonged, let's say to 21 days. So the first thing she should look at really is that she should look at those features. So if those features are not there, then she knows that she's going to count the 5 days. The remaining days, she take her bath, she starts praying. Now, if those features are there, then she will still continue at the 15 days is better for her to take her spiritual bath, because it is very clear that surely it is the pill that she's taking that is causing the flow. Now, the next thing is that what if he's not sure of the features? Many women from my interaction, the books and other things, they don't know these features. Now, she doesn't know whether he has this feature we are describing. He doesn't know whether he has feature we are describing. So if she's taking pill and she's not sure, then the best thing is that she just what? She counts her 5 days. She's not sure now, so she counts her 5 days, then she takes her spiritual bath and she starts praying. Well, this is what the ulama have mentioned. Inshallah, we'll continue. May Allah give us the best understanding and forgive us our shortcomings and admit us to paradise on the day of Qiyamah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.